All right, I'm here with my buddy Goose, and in this video, we're gonna go over some tips you can use if you have a dog that doesn't like being touched or having a collar or harness or a leash attached. Notice leash, Goose already has a leash on him. He will bite people who try to put a leash on or take it off. Now, part of this is, I just went over off camera body language and cutoff signals for dogs to know what to look for. Cutoff signals for dogs could be licking their lips, baring their teeth. Those are pretty obvious. Baring the teeth is a pretty obvious cutoff signal. He didn't give me one there, but usually dogs don't like it when we reach over their head. So a lot of times dogs will duck their head, turn their head to the side. Those are the ways the dog says, I'm uncomfortable. And so, what a lot of people do is we just keep on going through. I got to trim the dog's nails, so I'll pin the dog down and hold their nails and I'll trim their nails. So what I want to do is I want to create a positive emotional response. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do something called a conditioned emotional response, or a CER. Now, he's wearing a leash. The guardians were going to take it off, but he sometimes is uncomfortable with that. Right now he's relaxed. They thought they probably could do it, but I wanted to do this video. I didn't want to get him all worked up, so we're just going to leave the leash on. So the first thing I want to do is I want him to understand that this leash is a positive thing. And the way that I do that through this thing called a CER, conditioned emotional response, is I'm going to expose him to a portion of the leash. So I have my hands behind my back. I pull up, he looks at the leash, I say yes, and then the leash goes away. Yes. Not putting the leash on him yet. I didn't really look at it that time, so I didn't reward him. Now, see how he looked there? Yes. I was asking for a little bit more criteria. I wanted to have him move towards it. And so I moved these away, and that was a bad example in terms of my mechanics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it to him. Yes. Then it goes away, and I give him a treat. I'm saying yes. I'm marking him either looking at it, leaning towards it, or touching it. And so this, he doesn't actually have to have it attached. So reaching towards it, yes, gets him a treat. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pairing the approach of the leash with him getting a treat. So now I'm going to have the leash in a more traditional aspect. And so I'm going to hold on this, let him have this, and I reach for it and I pull it back. He's nibbling on it, comes towards him, it goes away. So I'm not actually following through the whole thing. And then I release. Yeah. So there's nothing negative for him with this scenario. I'm getting, there you go. Yeah. So now I go like this, and right there he bared his teeth a little bit. Here you go, buddy. So when he bares his teeth, whoops, here it is, buddy, sorry. It's right there. When he bares his teeth, he's saying I'm uncomfortable or I disagree, or if they growl, that's kind of how I interpret it. So now what I'm doing, yes, and it goes away and gets that. There we go. So now what I'm making this is what we call a precedent. So when the leash approaches, it means I'm about to get a treat. So now, again, I approach it here. Yes. 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 And you see, what I'm looking for are his ears flipping back. Is he turning away from it? Is he baring his teeth? Is he getting still? Is he breathing heavy? He's looking around. He's like, what are you guys all looking at? Just a dog getting some weird guy offering the leash. So I touched it to the D-ring. Nothing bad happened. He got a treat. It's right there. Saw he kind of hung up his teeth. So that's a baring of the teeth. So that's his way of saying, you're moving a little bit more faster than I'm comfortable doing. So I offered the treat away from him. He approached it. He looked up the treat. I left my hand there, but the hand didn't come any closer to him. So all behavior is trying to achieve something. If I listen to him and when he says, that's my limit, and I stop pushing, then he doesn't have to go to a bite. Now, I was talking to a client the other day and they're like, but I had to take the dog for a walk. I have to take the dog in the car. I have to put the muzzle on. I have to trim their nails or whatever it is. That part might be true, but we don't have to do it right now. There's a meme that says an emergency is not the time to practice, and practice is not an emergency. So if I know that I have to put him on a leash I might practice this exercise just like we did. And as soon as he gives them, his teeth were stuck in that in kind of a little bit of a snarl, we stopped. And then I can kind of, give him some positive, some happiness. Maybe do a little hand targeting. Yes. So now him approaching my hand is something that's good, but he's calling the shots, not me. So this might be something you might have to practice a couple of times to get him comfortable. Yes, and this is why I showed hand targeting off camera, so that he is approaching us and putting his nose on our hand, and he feels good. Now, this is also something what I call, and why does he not like the leash attached? Probably had an animal control person. He was a found dog. They have the pole with the loop. They grab him, the dogs flail, and then he puts them in there and takes them to shelter. Shelters are stressful AF for dogs. And so that might be the experience that he has. And the guardians mentioned it's getting easier to leash him up because now he's starting to associate the leash going for a walk. That's why I start this off with the CER of holding it behind my back, and I have a treat in my other hand, and I'm going to do a switcheroo for you. So I'm like, here, yes, and then then it goes away, and he gets a treat. So just the looking at it gets me a treat. Then leaning towards it gets me a treat. Then touching my nose to it gets a treat. When I was doing it, I was the first part, and to make kind of sum this up so you guys can watch it later, you're gonna hold a treat to his mouth first. If I can get one out. There you go. Let him nibble on it. And I just reach this partially, and I pull it back. And eventually it goes a little bit more. Eventually it's touching the D-ring. And I probably, and this is kind of what I call the training wheels version of it, where I'm holding out the treat first, like this, then I'm doing the movement. But eventually, after we do this enough, we would like to have it be movement, then they get a treat. So now the leash being attached means I'm getting something at the end of it. But if he gives you any cutoff signals, either stop, reset, and then go back to pairing the treat, letting him chew on it first as you're, didn't do a good example of that, doing this where I'm going towards him, but I'm reading his body language. Now, when we're doing this, again, or something I was gonna say, he looks pretty calm right now. This doesn't look like we're doing a lot. This is like riding a roller coaster for him. If you're on a roller coaster, you're sitting on your butt, you're not doing much, but you probably burn several hundred calories because the intensity of the experience. Even though we take this for granted, not doing anything, this is a lot for him. So this is something should happen over the course of maybe 1 or 2 minutes, multiple times a day, as opposed to trying to do 10 or 15 minutes all at once, if that makes sense. Yeah. And after a while, like I said, he just looks at this as a positive thing. Now, we have another dog that's a guardian of food, and if that other dog is here, even if the other dog's not a guardian of food, that now makes me feel like, are you trying to gang up on me? It's a disadvantage. So we want to pick and choose our times. We want to pick a time, like for him, we've been here for 2 hours, almost a little over 2 hours. This is probably not the ideal time to push forward on this because he's probably tired. He doesn't have a lot of, I'm guessing you don't have a lot of guests. I've been here for 2 hours. I talk a lot. And so that's a lot for him to deal with. So when you're doing this, you might want to, I know that it seems kind of oxymoron to take him for a walk first because he has got to have a leash. But to let him play fetch or some snuffle mat games or whatever it is and get him some exercise first, then make sure he has about 10 or 15 minutes to rest, then practice this game when he has low energy. When he's bouncing off the walls, not a good time to practice this. When the other dog's challenging him or anything else. So we want to pick and choose our battles. I'd like to see you guys doing this, maybe each one of you doing this with him maybe twice a day in 2-minute practice sessions. And you should notice that you're getting better and better. And eventually you touch that D-ring, pull it back, and he gets a treat. I'm also using tricky trainers. You also might need to use a higher value treat for this. The tricky trainers I balled up into little pieces, but I might take a full one, smash it, and then let him nibble on it. And I might go back and forth a couple times. Could be another way that I do it. But the idea is to go very gradually, very progressively, and at the end of each step, he gets a treat so that for him it's a positive thing and we're changing his emotional response from a negative to a positive. Can you let him go? Hey, buddy. Goose. You stay there. Well, this is my buddy Goose, and these are some tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that likes to get a little mouthy or nippy when you try to attach the leash to go for a walk.